Hey everybody, today on Northern Revolutions, I want to talk about the Beatles Let It Be and why I have so many of them. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. My name's Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. Today I'm going to talk about the Beatles Let It Be album. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm a big Beatles fan. And I want to talk about Let It Be. It's an interesting album. It's not my favorite album, not by far, but it's an interesting one, and I have a lot of them. And they're all different. So we're going to talk about why I have so many versions of this album. Before I get into that, though, if you could do me a favor, hit the like button. If you would be so kind, give me a subscribe. I do appreciate it. And don't forget that bell notification icon to let you know when I've uploaded new videos. So Let It Be. Let It Be was the Beatles' last studio album, released in 1970. But I don't like to think of it as the Beatles' last studio album. It was not the last album recorded. It was recorded before Abbey Road, but released afterwards. It was mired in, let's say, post-production delays. I like to think of Abbey Road as the last album, the Beatles' swan song, so to speak, the one that they went into the studio and said, you know, we can do one better for our farewell. But Let It Be is an interesting project to take a look at. If you're really interested, go see the Peter Jackson documentary. Off the heels of the Sgt. Pepper album, which was, I think to say a lavish production would probably be an understatement, and all of the tensions within the group during the recording of the White Album, Paul sort of envisioned a project where the band would sort of get back to their roots and possibly even start doing live shows again, as they had stopped touring in 66. Hence, the project was originally called Get Back. So the Beatles convened at Twickenham Film Studios in January of 69. And the idea was that they would start with nothing, rehearse, practice, develop songs, and this whole process would be filmed and ultimately made into a documentary and culminate with a live performance and the release of an album. The recording took place over 28 days, transitioned from Twickenham to the Beatles studio in their Apple offices on Savile Row in London, and it culminated with the performance on the rooftop on the 30th of January 69. In April of 69, the Beatles released Get Back as the first single from the project. And at that time, all of the session tapes were handed over to Glenn Johns, who prepared a rough mix of the album, which was ultimately rejected by the Beatles. At that point, no one could really decide what to do with the project. So they reconvened at Abbey Road and recorded the album that ultimately would become Abbey Road, and it was released in September of 1969. And during that time, John Lennon and George Harrison asked Phil Spector, the famed American producer that had done a lot of Motown stuff and was famous for the Spector Wall of Sound recording style. They asked him to see what he could do with the tapes. And ultimately, you know, he took what was a collection essentially of rehearsals and added a lot of overdubs and orchestrations and embellishments, and he Phil Spectorized it and ultimately put together what's not a bad album. And that was released in May of 1970 as the Let It Be album that we know today. So if any of you have seen my Beatles deep dive video, you know that I have a fairly comprehensive Beatles collection. So it stands to reason I've got several copies of Let It Be. And I have several copies for a reason. They're all a little bit different. And I'm going to go over those today so that you can sort of see the different variations of Let It Be that are out there. Okay, first up, I want to show you the original Canadian first pressing Let It Be box set. This is one of the grails in my collection, quite frankly. Probably second only to my butcher cover. Much more common than the butcher cover, but still pretty rare. Not a lot were released, and even less have survived. So these are out there, and you see them periodically, but you're $300, something like that. So I'm going to show you what this is all about. I don't open this very often, so what it is, it's a slip cover. This cover comes off. And what's housed inside is a tray with the book, I'm gentle with this. This is the book. It's called Get Back because I didn't retitle it. It has, pictures and dialogue. These books, thankfully this one is in fantastic condition. These books fall apart very, very easily because these were made by, I believe, Garrett and Lofthouse, which was EMI's company that they always used for all their printing. And when they put these books together, they used hot melt glue, which when it dries becomes fragile. So if you flip through these books a lot, the spine breaks on them and the pages fall out. This one, thankfully, is incredibly still intact. And it sits in this liner tray. And underneath this tray that the book sits in is the LP. And it's exactly the same as the single version of the LP that I'm going to show you in a minute. One thing to say about the Let It Be box set, and the reason that not a lot of them are around anymore, is these inner trays are very thin, flimsy cardboard, and they fall apart incredibly easy. It's really hard to find one that still has the tray intact in reasonable shape. Mine looks pristine for a reason. My inner trays are reproduction, because when I bought mine, the tray was non-existent. So there are places where you can get an exact replica of the original cardboard inner sleeve tray. So what's exciting about the box set? It's got a book in it. It's got a book in it you can't read because it's going to fall apart. But I like having it just because, again, I'm a completist, so it's cool. It's one of the first box sets, certainly the oldest box set that I have, and it's a piece of Beatles history that's not as easy to come by. So that's the Let It Be box set. It was the same in the UK, except that the outer jacket, I'll call it slip cover, in the UK was glossy. In Canada, it was matte. But other than that, they were the same. Okay, so this is the Canadian first pressing. It's just a simple, single jacket, the artwork that everyone's familiar with. Nothing simple. This was the original pressing as it released in May of 1970. It's on Apple. This was the first. This is how it was released. This was the first one that I ever purchased when I started collecting Beatles records back in the early 90s. And that's the way I listened to it for a fairly long period of time. This here is the American first pressing. This was different than the release in most countries, because in most countries it was issued, as I mentioned, as a box set or just a single EP. The United States never got the box set, but they did get a jacket that was a little bit different than everyone else's. Theirs was a gatefold jacket. So you can see, studio shots. There's a shot from Twickenham. The other thing that's different, the apple's red, and the apple's red on the label as well. Why? I have no idea. That's just the way they were issued. So while the US didn't get the elaborate box set, they did get an album that was a little bit fancy. So all three of these releases, the box set, single LP, Canadian in those cases, in the US, it's the same mix, just different packaging. The next one that I've got that came out in 2003 is a very interesting project. This is Let It Be Naked. Now, critics will call this a Paul vanity project. Paul made no secret he was never a big fan of how Phil Spector put his stamp on the original Let It Be and really took it away from the back to basics, raw performance, on the floor recording that he had envisioned and put some lavish production on it. So what Let It Be Naked is Paul's de-spectorization of the album. So at his direction, the engineers at EMI went back to the original tapes and stripped away all the orchestration and all the special sound effects and all of the extra overdubs and stuff, and really got it to what Paul had intended, a more raw version of Let It Be. It's still, they still sound similar. Like the songs aren't dramatically different, but a lot of the extra stuff has been removed. So it is a different listen, but it's not like electric versus acoustic, if that's what you're thinking. So the interesting thing about this record, it's nice packaging. It's sort of a negative version of the theme of the original, where they have photographs. These have negative photographs. Gatefold jacket. What's nice about this, there's a book in here as well that, along the same lines of the Get Back book that's in the Let It Be box, it sort of tells the story of the sessions and really what Paul is trying to accomplish with Naked. So there's a nice, I don't know how many pages this is, but it's probably about, 40 pages, something like that. It is released on Apple, but rather than have an Apple label, it is a special Let It Be Naked label. See there? The other thing that I guess you could say is interesting, they also include a little 7-inch, they call it the fly on the wall recordings. And it's the same as what you would see in the Peter Jackson documentary. It's the same as the one disc in the Super Deluxe box set that I'm going to talk about. It's what's in every Let It Be bootleg that's ever been released. It's just, it's conversations and snippets of songs and rehearsals and whatever. And it's just on a little 45 that has a similar label to the 12-inch. It's interesting for people that, just want a little taste of what the Let It Be sessions are. So that's what came along with the rest of Let It Be Naked packaging. One other thing I should note about Let It Be Naked is that Paul changed the track listing. Not only did he reorder the songs, he also removed the two sort of snippets of songs, which was Maggie May and Dig It. But what he did do, which I think is great, is he replaced them with John's Don't Let Me Down, which was never on the original album. It was a single. So that's on this album, and I think it makes it a much better record with the inclusion of Don't Let Me Down. So the next one that I have to show you is the 2012 Stereo Remaster. So looks just like my original you know, Canadian 1970 jacket. It's the same as the UK original jacket, not like the gatefold one in the US. The record itself has the UK Apple label on it. What the 2012 remaster is, back in 2009, EMI, I guess at the Beatles' direction, remastered the entire Beatles catalog in both mono and stereo, and they were released on CD. I guess the goal was to have the definitive version of the Beatles catalog to provide the best possible sound quality. So in 2012, that collection and the individual albums themselves were pressed on vinyl in stereo for the first time using those remasters. The issue that a lot of folks have with it, I think myself included, is it's not an analog transfer. So these stereo recordings were made from digital masters. Bit of a side note here, in 2014, all but the last 3 albums were released as mono remasters on vinyl, and those were direct analog tape to vinyl. So sound quality on these is better than a lot of previous versions, but many would argue that they're not as good as the originals. So hopefully someday they'll do a stereo, true analog tape to vinyl. Let's hope so. So last but not least, we have this big monster, the Super Deluxe box set, which came out in October of 2021. So what is the Super Deluxe? Well, let me set it down because it's heavy. Giles Martin, who's George Martin's son. George Martin was the Beatles' producer through their entire career, give or take one album. He's been sort of, I guess, appointed the custodian of the Beatles material, and he's gone through and done several remaster projects. When the 50th anniversaries rolled around for those big albums, Sgt. Pepper and the White Album and Abbey Road, Giles Martin was tasked with giving it a proper remix and a remaster to bring it into the 21st century. So that's what he did with Let It Be. So what's in this giant box? I'm going to show you. First, there's a book. It's a hardcover book. It's got a lot of nice photos, excerpts of conversation, studio dialogue, articles about the making of the album, detailed accounts of all the different songs. It's a great book. It's about 150 pages. It's wonderful. Here's the main product. This is the new Let It Be. Looks identical. The label even looks the same as the 2012 mix that I showed you. But this is the new Giles Martin stereo remix. So how's it different? I'm not an audiophile. I don't have ears for it. I don't have the stereo for it. But what I can tell you is it sort of walks the line between honoring what the album was originally, but toning down some of the Phil Spector-isms and trying to create a good quality stereo mix. Does it do a good job? I think so. Do I think it's better than the 2012 mix? Yeah, I think it's a little bit better. There's some songs I may not be able to tell the difference. But I think he's done a pretty good job. One of the complaints a lot of people make of Giles Martin's mix is he tends to be a little heavy on the bass. I find this mix is fine. The thing that I think about this Let It Be box set that is the most exciting is this. If you recall, at the beginning of the video, I talked about the tapes were given to Glenn Johns initially to put together a mix. This is when the album was still called Get Back. Well, this is it. This is the original mix that Glenn Johns did in 1969. And this was going to be the cover art. It was set to mirror what they had done on Please Please Me, to sort of bookend. That was the start of their career. This is the end of their career. I love this from a historical perspective. It's something that hardcore Beatles fans have wanted for a long time. With that said, is it good? No. It feels very rough. It feels, I mean, if Paul was going for, sort of live off the floor, get back to your basics, I mean, I guess this is what this is, but I think it's too rough to be a finished album. And I can completely understand why the songs were rejected, why this mix was rejected. I just think there was a little too much dialogue, and there were better song choices that could have been made. A couple other things that are in this as well. There's a double disc of, they call it Apple rehearsals and jams. Listen, it's like every Get Back, Let It Be bootleg that we've all heard for the last 50 years. I personally don't find it particularly entertaining. I also didn't find the Peter Jackson documentary entertaining either. I don't know. Like, I get its historical significance, and I get the historical significance of this. And the last thing that's in the Super Deluxe box set, there's an EP that has some alternate unreleased mixes from Glenn Johns, because he also did a second mix in 1970 that was also rejected before it was given to Phil Spector. So that's the Super Deluxe box set. So there's kind of a look at some of the versions of Let It Be that are out there. Which do I like better? No question. For me, Let It Be Naked. Probably not a popular opinion. I love this. To me, it feels more authentic, and I get what Paul was going for. This feels like a band getting back to its roots. I still enjoy the Phil Spector version of the album. I just like Let It Be Naked better. Which of all of these versions has better sound quality? I don't know that I'm the guy to ask for that. As I've mentioned, I'm not an audiophile. A lot of times, if I'm trying to discern between different mixes, I'm probably not going to guess which one's the right one. I've always been very happy with the original pressing. I've always thought it sounded great. Thankfully, I've got a version where my vinyl is in good shape. I think that might be the one I would listen to if I'm talking about the non-naked, the fully clothed versions of Let It Be. I think I'd probably pick the original. I like the 2021 Giles Martin mix, but if I were to compare it to the 1971, I don't know that I could probably pick out the differences. I guess if I played track for track, but is it enough to make me go, I have to listen to the 2021 mix? No. But for those of you that have better ears than I do and have better stereo systems, I'd be very interested to hear what your thoughts are. What version of the album do you like better? So, thank you for watching. If you could do me a favor, like I said, and give me a like, I would greatly appreciate that. A subscribe very much helps my channel. I do appreciate that as well. Don't forget that bell notification icon to let you know when I've uploaded stuff. I'll be back very soon. Catch you on the flip side. Bye.